What is up, Booger Beans? Welcome back to another episode of Adventures with Boog. On this episode, we are going to be putting in our propane tubing. So, I've got this 1/2-inch OD copper tubing, and today we picked up a copper tubing bender. I had a different bender, but if you saw in the last episode, that bender didn't work because it was 3/8 inch, and this is 1/2 inch. So, you have to have the right size bender, but luckily this guy was on sale for 50% off, so we got a pretty good deal on that. So what we're going to do first, I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with the stove. I'm going to put the piece in there, bend it down, and figure out where there's going to be a hole in the floor. We're going to drill a hole right through the floor there, and then from there we're going to go down and into the propane tanks. Just above the floor there, what we'll do is put a T, and from that T, the top portion of the T will go to the stove, and the side portion of the T is going to go over to the water heater in the back of the bus. We also got, I got 6 1/2-inch unions. The goal is to use 0 of them and basically have only one tie-in point in the middle of the line, which is the T. The problem with doing that is it's very hard to put hard line through tight spaces without having to bend it before, so we might have to use the union in a couple of places to do that. The reason why we don't want to use a lot of unions is because it helps to prevent any leaks. Obviously you don't want your propane leaking into your bus. That could cause a real big issue down the road. So we don't want to do that. But the first things first is we need to straighten out some of this tubing. So you can get a tubing straightener, and if I was a plumber, I would probably get that, but a tubing straightener is about $300 to $500 for this type of tubing, which I think is absolutely ridiculous for a couple of rollers. But I've been searching the internet, figuring out how you can easily straighten this tubing, and there's kind of 2 schools of thought. You can straighten it by laying it out on the floor and kind of wiggling it into shape, and lots of people have said that works really well. Or you can kind of compress the end of the tubing and put a 2x4 in a vise with a 1/2-inch hole in it, and you basically just yank the tube through that 1/2-inch hole, and it straightens it out. The thing is, if you're going to do that, you need to make sure you have enough tubing to do the rest of your bus. So I have 50 feet of tubing, and I think we're only going to need about 35 feet of tubing. So we've got a little bit extra, and so a little bit of test and trials that we can use to make sure that we're doing a pretty good job. But that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to drill a hole in a piece of 2x4, put it in our bench vise that's mounted to the floor, and then we'll get to straighten this thing. So let's get to it. So this is the fitting where the hard line is going to attach into this ferrule right here. So I'm going to measure from there. It needs to stick in about a 1/2 inch to the back of the cabinet. Get that in there nice and square. So here we're going to need 14 3/8 to the back side of the pipe. And then I need to measure down through the cabinet up to about that same level. So we're going to need about 27 inches there. So 14 3/8 and 27, we're looking at what, 41, 42 inches, minus the length of the T, plus a little bit on the bottom. So we're probably looking around 36 inches. But I'm going to go measure. I'm going to go measure the T's, and then we'll get a better number off that. So let's head back inside and measure the T. So I'm going to mark a little mark on the tube here, just so I know where the beginning is, that I put inside the guide, and line it up right with the edge of the guide, put it there. Now this tubing bender says it only bends 90 degrees, but as you can see here, it bends much more than 90 degrees. So I got to watch it and make sure we only bend 90 degrees. Looks pretty close. I'll go one more. Pop it out.
Probably only goes 90 degrees without putting a kink in it.
looks pretty good. It's a tiny little mark in the middle there. But other than that, yeah, it's really not bad. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure from that mark to the end of this. So then we know how much this bend adds. So then when we put it inside to go to the stove, we know where we need to bend this guy.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. So this guy adds right on 4 inches. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to get our piece that's 36 inches long. We're going to measure 14 3/8 first, make a mark, go back from that point 4 inches, make another mark, and that first mark is what will line up inside the die, and it should go in the bus perfectly. Okay, Beans, so all of the indoor plumbing is inside the bus. We did have to use 2 unions underneath, one underneath this sink, and then one just outside in the mechanical chase that's there. Just there was no way to kind of fish the pipe down and get it to go all the way to this T on the stove without having to have a break, unfortunately. So that's kind of a pain in the butt, but 2 unions is not too bad. It's only 2 fittings we have to check. They're both easily accessible to check and should be good to go. The stove fitting is tight. The T on the bottom of the stove fitting is tight. The water heater fitting is tight and ready to go. So now all we have to do is drill a 5/8 inch hole through the floor and couple things. Hopefully we don't hit a cross member underneath the floor. That would be a pain in the butt. It's harder to drill, but we've been lucky so far. So I'm hoping this is our last one that we have to drill through the floor, so I'm hoping that we get lucky on this one too. Then we'll run down, we'll make a 90, we'll run across the bottom side of the bus, and we'll strap the copper tube up to the bottom of the bus, run down beside the propane tank, run over, and then run through the back side of the propane tank and up to the diverter valve and the propane vent. So the hope again is to do that in one piece of tubing, but I think it's going to be pretty hard to fish it into the propane tank location as well as get it into this hole. So I'm probably going to have at least 1 union in there somewhere. But again, make sure when you put your unions in, you're using it in an accessible location, because when you hook up your propane, you need to be able to check all of those connections, and you need to be able to ensure that it's not going to leak, and that over time you could check them again if you need. So yeah, that's where we're at. First things first though, I'm going to actually just build the little stand I need for this, for the stove, like, I don't know what those are, the burner support, I guess is what it would be called. So I need to build a little angle piece for that. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then we'll head outside and get that plumbing in. So we picked up the propane this morning for the bus. So both of our 20-pound propane tanks are full, so that's all good. And all the propane lines are set up now. So now what we need to do is we need to check for any leaks. So what we're going to do is, this is not the safest way to do this. We're going to hook up the propane and open the tank and allow propane to fill all of the lines. And then what we'll end up doing is we'll go around with the soapy water here. And on all the connections, we'll just dribble a little bit of soapy water. And if we see any bubbles growing, then we know that there's a leak there, and we'll shut the propane off, tighten it up, and then check again until we have no leaks. Then what we'll do is we'll leave the propane on overnight, and we'll come and check it again in the morning. It'll be good.
Well, no, because it will smell like ass in here if it's bad in the morning.
Yeah, and it will blow up and kill us all.
That's not funny.
No, I'm just kidding. But then we should be able to test our stove. We won't be able to test the water heater because we don't have water in the bus yet. That being said, we could drag out a garden hose, fill it up, and see if it works. It's not an impossibility. But we'll get to that point when we get there. So Sydney is going to work inside the bus, and I'm going to go work outside the bus because there's 2 connections outside the bus that I need to check. I'm going to check those ones, and she's going to check these ones in here. If you see any bubbles, scream.
Okay.
Say, hey, there's bubbles.
I'm so not confident in what I'm looking for.
Alright, Beans. So a combination of me and Sid going, or well, me going in and out of the bus, in and out of the bus, in and out of the bus. We were able to find 1 leak. Most of the fittings really were good.
Yeah.
Everything else was pretty good. We found 1 union that it looks like I over-tightened or bent. I don't know if you guys can see on the camera there. It's trying to focus on Sydney instead of the nut. But it's actually oblonged, and that's what happens if you over-tighten them. And it's so easy to do. 1/4 of a crank too much, and they don't seal. So unfortunately, like this entire union, like $8 is just garbage.
$8.
$8 is just garbage. So when you're doing your propane setup, be very, very careful and try not to over tighten. And I think what might be a better option is to like snug it up and then turn on your propane and tighten it until you no longer see a leak. Maybe that's unsafe,
super safe
but
idea.
I think it's a better idea because then you would know you didn't over tighten it.
No, I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay, that's what I recommend.
We
But
do
again, we're not gas
recommend
fitters.
any tightening. We're not experts in anything to do with this, so do not take our advice.
Yeah, so what we got the propane turned on right now, and we're just going to hang out in the bus for the next, 15, 20 minutes or so here, and see if anything blows up, or if we get any propane smell. And then after that, we will start the stove, I guess.
I'm so nervous.
We'll see what happens. We bought the stove down in Calgary months ago now. It's in the summertime.
Was like, July I think we got it.
Yeah, and
It was a hell of a deal though.
it was a good deal.
Couldn't pass it up.
But we don't know if the stove runs. We've never tried it. We've never hooked up to propane. It didn't have a hose with it. It didn't have any of that kind of stuff. So we're really hoping it works.
She seemed like a good, honest lady.
Yeah. So, yeah. I'm just going to put the other tank in because I don't have the other tank in there right now. I just had it out so I could check the fittings. And then we'll get to that. So I'll talk to you in a little bit. Oh. So that valve is maybe stuck. Let's try this one. That one works. And that one works. Hey!
Did they go higher than that?
No, that's max.
That's not great.
That's max. That's pretty hot. Okay. So 2 of them work. So we got the stove entirely working. So we did end up taking, there's a solenoid valve on the back of the stove. I ended up taking it all apart. And I don't know if that helped or not. But I adjusted the valve just so it was a little bit tighter, so that as the there's like this piece of copper that heats up, and when that heats up it expands and opens the valve, but it was quite loose, so I tightened that up so that it's a little bit more sensitive, I guess. And now once it gets warm it fires right up, so it works good. All of our burners are adjusted and they're all working well. So now we've got 2 grates for the stove, I think, yeah. So we've got 2 of these guys, and one of them is broken. It was dropped, well, it was cracked before we got it, and then when we brought the stove in here, it fell off the top of the stove and smashed on the concrete. So I've got to do some welding to try and fix that, but welding cast iron, not easy. So over the weekend, or over the week here, I'm going to try and work with that.
I think they've been painted over a few times. They honestly probably all 3 just need to be replaced.
Look at.
Oh no.
This one's broken too.
Yeah.
This one's cracked as well. So I'm going to try and weld them. If that doesn't work, we might just have to get something
It's
new.
been a real
setup or
challenge to
something.
try and find parts for this bad boy.
Yeah.
So that's not really something I'm looking forward to, but
So we might just have to build something or whatever.
we might just have to try and find a really cheapy garbage one on buy and sell that like straight up doesn't work and just pull stuff off of it.
Yeah, we could do that. Maybe that's an option. So maybe we'll look on Facebook or at that Old Farts RV Parts up in Edmonton.
Yeah.
They got some older stuff maybe. But yeah, I think that's it. Again, we haven't been able to test the water heater because we don't have water in the bus. I don't think I'm ready to put water in the bus, to be totally honest.
Okay, then don't.
Just because if we put water in the bus, that means we have to run our heating pads and our heat trace
All the
time until that water goes out. Or I guess we could put in 50 gallons,
And
run
just
it
run it.
through, and then just drain it out.
Yeah.
We could do that too. Maybe that's an option to take.
Seems a little wasteful though.
Well, the problem is the traps in the line will fill full of water, and once that trap's full, it's very, very difficult to get that trap emptied.
Mhm.
So if that freezes, it will crack the pipe,
Mhm.
which isn't good.
We'll just leave it.
So I think we're just gonna leave it until we're a lot closer to committing to dealing with it. And that being said, if the water heater doesn't work, it's totally removable by itself back
Yeah.
there. Like we don't have to.
We can isolate it.
Yeah, it's totally isolated, so we can just turn off the valve and pull it out. It's not a big deal. So that's where we're at, really. The next part is finishing the framing. Like we're gonna go. We got to get some plywood and some 2x4s and some 2x3s and some 2x2s, and just go to town, get this thing frickin' framed out, get the couch done, get the fridge area done, get the upper cabinet done. Just crank it out. Like
Yeah, that stuff Tanner's pretty quick at doing.
yeah,
So.
like wood framing and the planking and like that kind of stuff. I can do a lot of it in a very short amount of time, compared to some of this other stuff that
so
takes
nitpicky.
it takes a lot
Well,
longer.
it's like
right?
we said, like at the beginning when we first started, everything seemed to go really fast because it's like a big dramatic change every time you do anything because it's very little cost to do a lot of work and it's really fast work.
Yeah.
And now it's like, yeah, we spent 3 hours today getting the stove to work, but you can't see anything different than you saw earlier today.
Yeah, exactly. And literally, we spent 3 hours just monkeying around with the stove, trying to get it to work.
So that stuff's really fun when you get to actually see stuff progressing.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, that's where we're at. If you guys, I don't know, if you know where to get knobs for this kind of stove,
Yeah. Oh.
leave them down in the comments below. Our knobs were A, super archaic, and B, I believe 2 of them were broken.
Yeah, 2 of them were broken.
Yeah, the edges were broken on them,
But-
so we can't use them, and we've lost them.
And they were ugly, but honestly, at this point, I would keep the uglies and just spray paint them because they're so hard to find, but we don't have them anymore.
Yeah, I don't know where they've
And
went.
they're broken.
They're somewhere in the garage or been thrown out by accident, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't
It's
know.
possible.
And then, so yeah, the next kind of thing is starting that framing. We're going to start putting in the vanity and that kind of stuff too. Yeah, we're really getting close here. We really are. It's just lots
yeah, it
of
looks
wrapping
distant,
up
but
stuff.
all the stuff that's left is fast.
Yeah, it's lots of just wrapping
Mm-hmm.
stuff up. So, yeah, I think that's where we're going to end this episode, really. And I don't know what we're going to get done this week. Probably not much. Just money problems. Really. Yeah, Christmas and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So come probably Saturday or Sunday, we'll get more wood and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff after payday. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and have a great night.